Imagine a car that seemed to have come straight from the future in 1941. A vehicle with a fully automatic retractable hardtop, headlights that disappeared into the bodywork, and doors that opened with the simple touch of a button. The Chrysler Thunderbolt was not just a car, it was a bold promise of what the future could be. But what led Chrysler to create such a revolutionary car, and why were only 5 units built? Today, we'll dive into the history of one of the most fascinating concepts in the automotive industry. By the late 1930s, the American automotive industry was undergoing a transformation. Until then, most cars had functional designs with prominent fenders, imposing grilles, and little concern for aerodynamics. But something was changing. General Motors had already unveiled the legendary Buick Y-Job in 1938, considered the first concept car in history, and it stirred up the competition. Chrysler didn't want to fall behind. It was in this environment that the Chrysler Thunderbolt was born, a project that didn't aim to generate immediate sales, but rather to showcase the future. Chrysler wanted to show the public and the press that it too could be daring, that it could go beyond the conventional. The mission was clear: to create a car that was not only seen as transportation, but as a futuristic work of art, capable of projecting the brand's image into the next decade. The design was entrusted to LeBaron, a prestigious body division, under the direction of Ralph Roberts, with the collaboration of the young and visionary Alex Tremulous, who would later design iconic cars like the Tucker 48. They set out to create a revolutionary vehicle, inspired by clean and fluid aeronautical aesthetics, which was beginning to gain traction in automotive design. The name Thunderbolt was not chosen by chance. It was directly referenced to the record-breaking car of British driver George Easton, who in 1938 reached an impressive speed of 357 miles per hour on the Bonneville Salt Flats. By adopting this name, Chrysler immediately associated the concept with speed, innovation, and boldness, 3 core values aimed at impressing the public. But turning this vision into reality was a monumental challenge. The idea of an envelope body where the fenders merged with the main structure and the wheels were almost hidden was unprecedented for Chrysler. This required new aluminum molding techniques, a material chosen to reduce weight. The curved one-piece windshield, another groundbreaking feature, had to be specially ordered, as automotive glass technology at the time couldn't produce curves of this magnitude. And there was the biggest challenge of all: the retractable hardtop. At a time when most convertibles used manual canvas tops, the Thunderbolt was designed with a fully automatic metal roof that would retract into the rear compartment at the touch of a button. It was so futuristic that decades later it would still be considered an innovation. Every detail of the car conveyed this idea of a futuristic electric vehicle. Doors that opened by buttons instead of handles, electric windows, retractable headlights that disappeared into the bodywork, even the trunk lid could be electronically activated. Everything was designed to impress, and, more than that, to show that Chrysler had mastered technology. It's worth remembering that the target audience wasn't the average American consumer. The Thunderbolt was aimed at design enthusiasts, collectors, dealers, and the press. It served as a powerful marketing tool capable of drawing crowds to dealerships. And it fulfilled this role. Reports from the time say that wherever the car was displayed, huge lines formed. In some cities, tens of thousands of people would travel just to see that machine that seemed to have come out of a science fiction movie. There were no plans for mass production. The car was too expensive, too complex, and too fragile to be put on assembly lines. But that didn't matter. The goal was different: to build Chrysler's image as an innovative, creative, and bold company. And at this point, the Thunderbolt excelled. It didn't just impress the public of its time, it also left its mark as one of the first great concept cars in the industry, alongside General Motors' Y-Job. More than just an automobile, it was a statement. Chrysler didn't just want to make cars, it wanted to shape the future of mobility. Behind the futuristic body and the retractable top that amazed crowds, the Chrysler Thunderbolt also hid a mechanical set that reflected the best of the brand's engineering at that time. Although it was a concept car, it wasn't just a pretty model. It was fully functional and could run like any other luxury car of the era. The heart of the Thunderbolt was the Spitfire straight-8 engine, an inline 8-cylinder with side valves, typical of Chrysler in the early 40s. With 323.5 cubic inches, about 5.3 liters of displacement, this engine delivered about 140 horsepower at 3,400 RPM. It may seem modest by today's standards, but for a car with the futuristic roadster vocation, it was plenty of power to exceed 100 miles per hour, or about 160 kilometers per hour. This engine was praised for its smoothness. The inline 8 was known for offering abundant torque at low RPMs, ideal for a heavy car like the Thunderbolt, which was equipped with electrical and hydraulic systems that added complexity and mass to the structure. It's estimated that the torque was around 260 pound-feet, which provided firm launches and comfortable driving on open roads.
Coupled to it was Chrysler's fluid drive transmission, a semi-automatic solution. This system was innovative because it used a hydraulic coupling between the engine and the gearbox, which allowed the driver to stop the car without constantly pressing the clutch. For its time, it was almost a preview of the modern automatic transmission. With 3 manual gears and the option to engage overdrive, the Thunderbolt could maintain high cruising speeds without overloading the engine, a luxury in the 1940s. The structure that supported this set was the C26 chassis, derived from the Chrysler New Yorker and Imperial. Sturdy and elongated, it provided the necessary foundation to support the special aluminum body produced by LeBaron. Aluminum, by the way, was another impressive detail. At a time when most cars were made of steel, the choice of this lighter material demonstrated a pursuit of sophistication and weight reduction, something that would only become common in elite sports cars decades later. The body of the Thunderbolt was described as an envelope body. This meant continuous and clean lines without the pronounced fenders that had characterized automobiles until then. The wheels were almost hidden, covered by panels that blended into the car's silhouette. This decision wasn't just aesthetic, it also aimed at aerodynamics, a concept still in its infancy in automotive design at the time, but one that was gaining importance with the influence of aeronautical style.
Among the most eye-catching elements were the retractable headlights. At the touch of a button, they disappeared into the bodywork, leaving the front end even smoother and more futuristic. It's worth noting that in 1941, this solution was extremely rare and would only appear in some production models nearly 20 years later. Another fascinating technical point was the fully automatic retractable hardtop. While common convertibles used manual canvas tops, the Thunderbolt hid a metal roof in a rear compartment, powered by electric motors and synchronized mechanisms. This feature required precise engineering and was in fact one of the first implementations of a retractable top in history. The electrical systems were abundant. Doors that opened with buttons replaced traditional handles. The windows, also electric, were controlled smoothly, a novelty in 1941. Even the trunk lid could be electronically activated. In short, almost everything in the Thunderbolt responded to the touch of a button, something that gave the sensation of being in front of a machine from the future. Inside, the car offered only 2 seats, but the experience was striking. The wide, comfortable seats reflected the luxury standard of the time, while the instrument panel used lucite lighting, a translucent plastic material that looked modern and sophisticated. Everything inside conveyed modernity and refinement. However, not everything was an advantage. The added weight of the automatic mechanisms and the complexity of the retractable top required careful maintenance. The car wasn't as practical as it seemed and was closer to a technological sculpture than a mass production vehicle. But that was precisely the point, to prove how far Chrysler could go when it let imagination guide its engineers. Its final numbers were more impressive for the context than for absolute performance. An 8-cylinder inline 5.3-liter engine, 140 horsepower, generous low-end torque, semi-automatic transmission with overdrive, aluminum bodywork, retractable top, retractable headlights, electric doors and windows. In 1941, there was nothing like it. The Thunderbolt condensed into one automobile a list of innovations that would only become popular decades later. That's why it wasn't just a beautiful car, it was a statement of technological power and proof that Chrysler could dream big, even in tough times, on the brink of the United States entering World War II. The Chrysler Thunderbolt made its official debut in 1940 at the New York Auto Show, and from that moment it became a true moving spectacle. Unlike a production car, the Thunderbolt was conceived to impress, and it did so perfectly. When it was exhibited, crowds gathered around it. There was almost a futuristic aura in its presence. Reports from the time show that in Sacramento, more than 8,500 people attended a Chrysler dealership in a single day just to see it. In Denver, the number was even more impressive, 29,000 visitors in a weekend. To give you an idea, these numbers were equivalent to the turnout of major sporting events of the time. The automotive press and the public reacted with fascination. Newspapers highlighted the retractable hardtop, which seemed magical, the hidden headlights, which left the front end clean and futuristic, and the fact that almost everything in the car worked by electric buttons. In 1941, this was the equivalent of seeing a 21st century automobile. The Thunderbolt was seen as a promise of the future, a glimpse of what cars would look like in the coming decades. However, the Thunderbolt also carried some subtle criticisms. Some questioned the practical viability of so many innovations. The interior space was limited, the electric systems were complex and expensive, and the engine's power didn't fully match its bold appearance. But none of this mattered. It wasn't there to be practical, it was there to be a symbol. Production was extremely limited. Only 5 units were built, each with exclusive colors and details. Some records mention up to 6 units, but the consensus is that 5 were officially completed by LeBaron. All were sold to select collectors at the approximate price of $6,000, an extremely high amount for the early 40s, the equivalent of several times the price of a conventional car of the time. With the United States entering World War II in 1941, Chrysler, like other manufacturers, redirected its efforts to war production. This ended any possibility of the Thunderbolt being developed for mass production. It remained as a unique project, an isolated milestone, crossing time as a symbol of creativity interrupted by war. Decades later, the Thunderbolt became worshipped as one of the most important concept cars of the 20th century. Alongside the Buick Y-Job from General Motors, it is remembered as a pioneer of the show car concept, a vehicle not intended for production, but for marketing, brand building, and public awe. Many historians point out that the Thunderbolt helped solidify this strategy, which would become common in the post-war period, with manufacturers unveiling concept cars at international shows to gauge public reaction. Today, 4 known examples survive, scattered between private collections and museums. One of the most famous is the Copper Car, which preserves many of its original mechanisms and has been carefully restored. These cars are a frequent presence at elegance contests, such as Pebble Beach and Amelia Island, where they always attract looks and awards. The market value of the Thunderbolt reflects its rarity and historical importance. In 2011, one example was auctioned in Monterey for $935,000. Current estimates suggest that, depending on its condition and authenticity, a Thunderbolt can easily surpass the $1 million mark at international auctions. It has ceased to be just a car and become a true historical asset, comparable to rare works of art. For collectors, owning a Thunderbolt is like having a private museum piece. But it's no simple task. The electrical and hydraulic systems require constant maintenance. Original parts are practically non-existent, and restoring one of these cars requires highly specialized teams. That's why, in addition to the purchase price, the cost of preservation is extremely high. And here's the irony. What was once seen as a weakness, the mechanical complexity, the lack of practicality, the fragile mechanisms, is now exactly what makes the Thunderbolt even more valuable. It symbolizes a moment when Chrysler dared to dream without limits, creating a car that seemed impossible. The legacy of the Thunderbolt is immense. It not only inspired design trends, but also showed the world that the automotive industry could be more than pragmatism. It could also be spectacle, imagination, and dream. That's why, more than 80 years later, the Thunderbolt still fascinates and moves. It's remembered as one of the most important concept cars ever created, a masterpiece that transcended generations and became a myth. So, did you enjoy discovering this true gem of automotive history? The Chrysler Thunderbolt is proof that dreaming big is always worth it. If this video brought something new to you, leave your like because it helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of the upcoming episodes where we explore the rarest, most iconic, and curious cars in the world. Share this video with that friend who's also passionate about classic cars, because I'm sure they'll be surprised by this story. And I want to hear from you. What did you think of the Thunderbolt? Would you dare to have such a futuristic car in the 40s? And tell me in the comments, what car would you like to see in the next video? Your suggestion could be the next theme here on the channel. Thank you for watching until the end, and see you next time on the fascinating world of classic cars.